This meeting of the Public Utility Commission of Texas will come to order to consider matters that duly posted with the Secretary of State for July 30th, 2026. Good morning, everyone. Commissioners, I'd advise that we take up the items in order today. We do have a closed session where we have to consult with our FERC attorney. So I'd ask that we see if anyone has shown up for public comment, take public comment, and then go into closed session to hear from our FERC attorney, then come out and finish the agenda if that's amenable for everyone. All right.
Sounds good.
Okay. So Ron, will you please take us through the consent agenda, please?
Good morning, Chairman and Commissioners. First, I'd like to note that Commissioner Yachtman filed a memo stating she's recused from item number 3. By individual ballot, the following contested case items were placed on your consent agenda. Items number 2, 4 through 10, 12, 13, and 18 through 21. Items from the rules and project section of your agenda were placed on your consent agenda for item numbers 23, 30 through 33, and 42.
Thank you, Ron. With that, I will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as was just laid out.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion prevails. All right. Has anyone signed up for public comment this morning?
No, Chairman.
All right. Thank you, Alex. All right. So commissioners, let's go ahead and move into closed session. So having convened in a duly noticed open meeting, the commission will now at 9:33 a.m. on July 30th, 2026, hold a closed session pursuant to Chapter 551 of the Texas Government Code. It will consult with its attorney pursuant to Section 551.071 of the Code, deliberate personnel matters pursuant to Section 551.074 of the Code, and deliberate security matters pursuant to Section 551.076 of the Code. We'll be back shortly. The closed session is hereby concluded at 9:56 a.m. on July 30th, 2026, and the commission will resume its public meeting. The commission will now take action on the following matter that was deliberated on during closed session. I'll entertain a motion to intervene in FERC docket ER 26-2806.
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion prevails. All right, so Ron, that'll take us then to item number 3. We lay out item number 3, please.
Chairman, item number 3 is docket number 56687. It's the application of CSWR Texas Utility Operation Company, LLC, and Patterson Water Supply, LLC, for sale, transfer, or merger of facilities and certificate rights in Denton, Cook, Jack, and Montague counties. As a reminder, Commissioner Yachtman is recused from this item, and Chairman Gleeson filed a memo.
Thank you, Ron. So as the memo states, I'd approve the transaction, but different rates than were recommended in the PFD. I'd approve the rates from CSR, interim rates for CSR at the last base rate case rather than final rates. The rates recommended in the PFD were not in force or on file when the application was submitted. Interim rates were, and on notice, although notice of interim rates was not provided, final notice on rates was. I believe that the good cause exists under the Water Code to waive that notice requirement. Happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, I believe the interim rates are appropriate as well, particularly since there was identified, during this docket, a significant need to do capital improvements. I mean, close to $1.5 million. So, and the good cause is, I think, appropriate as well.
I completely agree. The $1.5 million in capital costs, I think, necessitates that particular rate, and I agree with your thinking there.
With that, I will entertain a motion to adopt the proposal for decision in part and reject in part consistent with my memo.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion prevails. Ron, will you lay out item number 11, please?
Item number 11 is docket number 58405. It's the application of Lone Star Transmission LLC to amend its certificate of convenience and necessity for the Phantom Hill to Tiger Solar 345 kV transmission line in Jones County. Chairman Gleeson filed a memo.
Thank you, Ron. As stated in the memo, I'd adopt the PFD with modifications and approve the consensus route. I also think we need to grant ENGIE's motion to withdraw from this proceeding. Happy to answer any questions.
I agree.
I agree with the consensus route and also appreciate you noting that we needed to add back in one of the, I guess, paragraphs that we typically put in these type of motions that deal with identification of the metallic pipelines.
I'm in agreement with your memo.
With that, I will entertain a motion to grant ENGIE's motion to withdraw and adopt the PFD as modified by my memo.
So moved.
A second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion prevails. That'll take us to item 15. Ron, will you lay out item 15, please?
Item 15 is docket number 59137. It's the application of El Paso Electric Company for approval of a system resiliency plan. Both Commissioner Yachtman and Commissioner Rohde filed memos.
All right. Commissioners, we'll have you lay out your memos. Commissioner Rohde, would you like to go first?
I would love to yield to Commissioner Yachtman.
Thank you. Thank you.
Ladies
Okay. Well, thank you, El Paso, for filing the information requested. It was very helpful. I will just kind of go through the memo. I do add back in those projects that were for critical care customers, as I think that the benefit of those is definitely outweighs the cost, as we've done in other projects as well. I will make a note, and this is for all utilities that are filing information. When I go through and do some of the math, and again, I am not the expert in adding, but when I catch mistakes, it's little details that we need to pay attention to. So just make note of that we do dig in and look at the math sometimes. But other than that, I'm happy to answer questions on the projects I added back
We dig in on the math all the time.
all the time. Dig math.
Questions?
Yep.
Okay.
No.
Commissioner Rohde?
Thank you very much. My memo is not intended to approve or disapprove El Paso Electric's system resiliency plan, but rather to emphasize the importance of 24/7 cybersecurity monitoring. As I note in the memo, FBI data shows cyber attacks tripling since 2018 to over 1 million reported attacks, causing $21 billion in harm in 2025 alone. Given the threat that cyber attacks pose, I want to stress the importance of having 24/7 manned operations along with software monitoring for our utilities. In my opinion, it is not enough to simply be warned about attacks, but also to be ready to respond quickly when threats or attacks arise. Therefore, I wanted to use this opportunity to share my view of the importance of a comprehensive and integrated cybersecurity program that includes having trained personnel always ready to respond if and when cyber threats arise to our utilities.
Appreciate that layout. Commissioners, questions for Mr. Rohde?
Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate your memo because I think part of what resiliency planning is really all about is managing the risk, and certainly identifying the risk is that first important step. And so I appreciate the time and also, the expertise that you bring to this because you did a lot in your
You're very kind.
previous world.
Thank you very much.
Totally agree. Appreciate both memos. With that, Commissioner Yachtman, would you like to make a motion?
Oh, sure. I move that we adopt the proposed order with modifications consistent with my memo.
Do I have a second?
I second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion prevails. Ron, will you add item 16, please?
Item 16 is docket number 59183. It's the application of Wind Energy Transmission Texas LLC to amend its certificate of convenience and necessity for the Muleshoe to Lyra Solar and Lyra BESS 345 kV transmission lines in Borden County.
Thank you, Ron. So, as Ron said, we have a PFD in this case. I would reject the recommendation in the PFD and would remand this back to SOAH. It's a bit unusual. We don't have any dispute over routing, but WETT proposed a design that involves the construction of 2 new parallel single-circuit transmission lines to connect to generation. The PFD discusses how WETT didn't provide quantitative evidence, such as studies, models, or cost comparisons showing how this design compares to other alternatives. I think it's appropriate for us to get additional data on whether this design is actually necessary for service, for accommodation and convenience for the public safety. And so with that, and in addition to, the issues highlighted by staff, I think it's appropriate to send this back to SOAH. Happy to answer any questions or hear your thoughts.
I agree with the remand as well.
I'm in agreement as well.
I too agree.
With that, I'll entertain a motion to reject the proposal for decision and remand this proceeding to SOAH consistent with our discussion.
So moved.
I
I second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion prevails. All right, I believe that concludes the contested case portion of our agenda. So we will move now to rules and projects. First project I have is item number 28. That is project 56022, reports of the Texas Reliability Entity. Good morning. Joseph, it's been a while since we've seen you. Welcome back.
Chair. Is this, we on here? Okay. No, good morning. I really appreciate y'all having us here.
Just hold a little closer. I think
Sorry.
the court report's
Good, just,
Cool name.
yes. Joseph Younger. I'm the Senior Vice President and Chief Operating Officer at Texas RE. And with me is David Penney, who's the Director of our Reliability Services group at Texas RE. So I just wanted to start by thanking y'all again for having us here. And I also wanted to start by thanking Commission staff. Over the last few years, we've worked with staff to really build a partnership, and either with working with Barksdale and Connie and doing quarterly meetings to talk about what's happening at that level, but also quarterly cybersecurity meetings with Chuck and his team, working with Olivia on the Black Start exercises and being able to observe and be involved in those important activities. So we've really developed a range of touch points, and that's been very important for our work, because one of the things that we've seen on the national level is there's a lot of attention being paid to what's happening here in Texas and all the innovative approaches that are going on to address the risks and the fundamental changes that we're all seeing across the continent to the electric grid. And so having those partnerships and that understanding and messaging really helps us spread awareness of what's happening here, as well as leverage all the innovation that's going on to inform those national discussions. So it's been a very important thing for us and really impactful. So I really want to appreciate the time staff spends with us and start with that. Just to kind of introduce our organization a bit, Texas RE's sole focus is on the reliability and security of the ERCOT grid. And we accomplish that in two fundamental ways. The first is through the risk-based enforcement of mandatory reliability and security standards. And those are in two large buckets. The first is the operations and planning standards, which run the gamut from modeling and planning all the way to individual resource performance, winterization, all those topics. The other main body of standards is cyber and physical security through our SIP standards, which is an important part of what we do. In addition to that work on the compliance side, we also collect and analyze a lot of data across the interconnection. And David's team is, that's their primary role. They look at all this data and then use it either to inform reports that NERC generates to look at reliability issues on the continent scale, like the long-term reliability assessment or the state of reliability report. But also we produce two reports each year that are only done by Texas RE and are only looking at the ERCOT interconnection. The first is the assessment of reliability performance, which is a backward-looking report that looks at how the ERCOT grid is doing. And that's what David's going to talk about today. We published that in June and filed it in our project. And then the other report is our regional risk assessment, which will come out in the fall. And that's a forward-looking report that looks at what the risks are, what are emerging issues, and then steps that are being taken to mitigate those risks as well. So that's something that we'll have out in October, November, and then happy to come talk about that as well. So with that, I'll get out of the way and let David talk a little bit about the highlights from the assessment of reliability performance, and then we can take any questions you might have.
Perfect.
Hi. And thank you for having us here again. My name is David Penney, Director of Reliability Services with Texas RE, and I think this is the third year being able to present to the commission, and it's very grateful for allowing us the time to do that. As Joseph described, our assessment of reliability performance, we've been putting out this product for, I think, 12 plus years now, 2014. It's definitely evolving over time as we try to make that product better to provide value, not only value to the stakeholders, but it also feeds into multiple programs and projects that we have within Texas RE, and I'll describe that a little bit later. So I guess to get started, if we look back at 2025 and the first half of 2026, from an operational perspective, things have actually been relatively quiet and calm. If you look back, because we've had no major events, no major storms, no hurricanes, thank goodness. It's been relatively calm. But even with that, there are certain, say, success stories. There's also challenges that we uncovered as we did our assessment. One of the first things to talk about as far as success stories is the cold weather performance. If you look back at 25, we had, and the first part of 26, we've had 3 major winter storms. Enzo in January 25, Kingston in February 25, and then most recently Fern. And through those 3 storms, the grid has performed very well. And I think that's a success story related to the ongoing implementation of ERCOT's weatherization inspection programs. But at the same time, we've also, the NERC standards related to cold weather weatherization have also become enforceable and implemented as well. So we are now collecting extreme cold weather temperature data from the entities as part of that NERC standard, as well as corrective action plans if they have a cold weather event, and also any cold weather constraints that may prevent them from operating during cold weather. So we have all that data at our disposal. With that being said, weatherization is still something we definitely need to keep our thumb on the scale. We cannot afford to get complacent around that. So it's, keeping these programs up and running is vital. The next success story, I think for 25 was the implementation of real-time co-optimization. As that program was, going through its process to get set up, we held bi-monthly meetings with ERCOT staff so that we could ask questions. They could keep us informed of what the process and steps were and testing they were doing, and we were able to ask questions and voice any concerns we had. It was a very worthwhile process. And since the implementation of RTC, at least the reliability metrics we've been trending have all shown either stable or positive performance, particularly in the area of frequency control and the deployment of ancillary services. So that has definitely worked out. On some of the concerns we're seeing from a reliability metrics, I guess let me back up a second. When we look at our reliability metrics, we trend those performances over multiple years. We try to look at a minimum of 5 years, but some of our data sets can go back 15 years plus. And so when we trend that data, we try to analyze it and do a statistical trend analysis on it to say if the trend is improving, if we're showing positive performance, if it's stable. It may be something we want to monitor if we have 1 or more bad years, or maybe something we classify as actionable if there's 2 or more consecutive years of declining trends. So when you use that analysis technique, 2 of the metrics that we look at fell into that actionable category, and both of those are tied at the hip to the large load integration issues. The first of those being the future reserve margins, and a lot of that has to do with the uncertainty of what's in the load interconnection queue and how we're going to handle that. I think this is one of those areas that, as Joseph described, that Texas is out front leading that. The batch zero process is hopefully going to give us some of that certainty we need around looking at the load forecast methodology and what's going to get included in our load studies and so forth. So hopefully as that process played out, we'll start to address that issue. And we're way ahead of what the rest of the country is doing in those regards. The second metric on the large load side is the operational performance related to voltage ride-through issues. We've been sending, in ERCOT, we've been seeing those types of events as far back as 2022, well before the events that got the press in Data Center Alley happened. The commission is probably aware of a very large event that had occurred just last week in Data Center Alley. There was a 230 kV line fault that tripped off 3,000 plus megawatts of data center load in that area. That event was more than double the size of those previous events. So this is definitely not a problem, or this problem is not going to go away anytime soon. It's something we have to address. And again, this is one of those things where I think Texas is leading from the front with the recent approval of NOGA 282. We're getting some, hopefully some things that are going to fix and address those problems. A couple other metrics that fell into the monitoring category. One of them had to do with the forced outage rates, or what we call E4 on the conventional fleet, specifically with coal units. What we saw in the data was The year-over-year trend from 25 versus 24 on the coal fleet, the forced outage rate more than doubled from a historical average of about 12% up to about 25% in 2025. You have to do a deeper dive in the data to understand what's going on with that because the coal fleet is relatively small, about 20 units. And what we saw was there was very long extended outages on 2 specific units that drove that metric to what happened. One of those outages began in the late fall of 24, ran through the entire year of 2025, and finally was brought back to service in February 26. A second unit had an outage that began in April of 25, stayed out for the remainder of the year, and is still out today, almost another 15 consecutive months. So that's what drove that metric and what happened. That's why we want to continue to monitor that. A similar story on the transmission side. We saw some significant changes in the forced outage durations we see on the 345 kV system. Again, it was a similar story there. There was a 345 kV auto transformer that had a substantial failure and a fire in the late fall of 24, has remained out through the entire year of 2025 and still remains out almost 18 consecutive months now. That outage of the auto transformer and the line with it accounted for more than 70% of the total outage duration we saw on the 345 kV system. The reason I'm bringing this up is there's a common thread related to all those outages is you had, I guess, substantial equipment or catastrophic equipment failures, and where the restoration or recovery of that equipment was either extended or exacerbated by supply chain issues. And that's not unique to Texas. We saw this in the NERC-wide data as well across the country. There are other areas that are seeing the same thing. One other metric to mention is around what we're seeing in terms of inertia and renewable penetration. There's some interesting things going on. Inertia is typically a very slow moving trend because it's tied to the changes in the resource mix. And with the recent explosion in solar, we're seeing some significant increases in the number of high renewable penetration, low inertia hours associated with that. If you go back from 24 versus 25 versus 26, there's several orders of magnitude of the number of hours we're seeing at these low inertia conditions, including some hours this past spring where we saw 85% plus renewable penetration. And you know, look back a few years ago, that was something we couldn't possibly fathom, but we're there. And the other interesting thing in the inertia aspect that we're seeing is the change in the timing of our lowest inertia hours. Historically, those used to be at nighttime under high wind and low load conditions. The past 2 years, those have moved, and they're now in the middle of the day under our peak solar penetration. And so, again, that's just another indication of how the grid is continuing to evolve. So to switch gears a little bit, I want to talk about all the tremendous amount of effort, blood, sweat, and tears that are going into risk mitigation efforts. And obviously, the primary thing that everybody's looking at is large loads. And I'll talk specifically about what's going at the NERC level. Over the past 18 months, NERC has published 2 white papers. One looking at the characteristics and risks of large loads, and the second one looking at an assessment of gaps of where there are not existing reliability standards that we can look at from the large loads. At the same time, there's been multiple event reports looking at the low voltage ride-through issues associated with large loads, the 2 Dominion events, and there's also an event review of the events in ERCOT, and where we partner with ERCOT and NERC staff to create that report. So those are driving, and as I said, I should also mention a couple of NERC alerts to collect data related to large loads. So all that is driving things at the NERC level to come up with a definition of what we're going to look at from making these guys NERC registered entities, so that we can have enforceable reliability standards associated with that. Those discussions are going on as we speak. We've not resolved what that load level would be. The preliminary discussions around 50 megawatt load levels, but that has to go through the NERC stakeholder approval process. The second piece that's already underway is once those entities become registered, is having a family of reliability standards associated as far as performance requirements, and that set of standards has already been developed. It's just waiting on the registration process to evolve. The second risk mitigation I want to talk about briefly is on inverter-based resources. Inverter-based resources. Sorry.
Yeah, David, maybe if you just speak up a little bit, so
Okay.
if
I'm
she's
sorry.
having trouble. No, you're fine.
Okay, is in inverter-based resources. As you know, FERC Order 901 was issued several years ago. That process is continuing. It's in its third year. In 2025, there were 6 new reliability standards that were filed related to inverter-based resources. The standards related to inverter-based ride-through issues have been approved. They're in the process of being implemented, and so forth. Again, that's another area where ERCOT is well ahead of them, because NOVA 245, for example, was approved way ahead of the NERC standards. We're well in advance of what NERC is doing. There's also the advanced grid support rule changes that are being discussed now as well. So again, that's an area where ERCOT is way ahead of what is happening nationwide. The last thing to talk about real briefly is, I mentioned at the beginning how our assessment of reliability performance feeds into other Texas RE processes. One of those is our outreach program. So the trends and indicators and risks that we identify through our reliability performance feed into our outreach program, primarily in prioritizing the webinars that we host monthly. I think in the last 18 months, we've had 40 plus webinars, as well as 2 workshops, a winter weatherization workshop last year, an evolving grid workshop, and then our upcoming winter workshop is actually here in a few weeks. So we're continuing to feed the things we identify through that assessment into our outreach program. The other thing is how it feeds into our compliance program. Again, the standards that are prioritized through what we identify as these risks feed into our compliance program. So we prioritize the audits based on requirements related to those high-risk areas. Well over 100 entities were engaged last year on these high-risk requirements. And then so we're trying to address our programs to focus on the key things we need to identify. I could keep talking for much longer. I'll stop there and allow y'all to ask any questions.
Commissioners, questions for Joseph or David? I guess I would ask, so you said a couple times that, ERCOT is basically leading from the front on these issues. So is it fair to say that the assessment is, while we're facing a number of challenges here, we're well positioned to find solutions to those challenges, and in many cases are providing solutions to the rest of the country on how to address these challenges? I
would definitely agree with that. Again, the NERC process for creating new standards can sometimes be laboriously slow. And so in some cases, we can't afford to wait. I think I made this comment when we presented here last year, because of the size of the Texas interconnection, any existing risk or emerging risks are probably going to show up here first. So we have to be poised to be proactive in dealing with those risks and not reactive to address them later.
And while they may show up here first because of our independence, we can also respond to them more quickly.
Exactly. Yeah.
Commissioners?
I do have one question. On page 27, you have your metrics in what y'all filed, and of course, you go right to the red to see where we're actionable. And on grid transformation, you have potential reliability impacts from operational characteristics of large computational loads. Is that in regards to ride-through, or are there other issues, just the fact that they're so much bigger and in one area? What do you mean by that?
The primary focus was ride-through, but there are other reliability issues that come with that. One of them is ramping and ramp rate limitations, because especially AI generated loads can ramp very quickly, and that can create frequency disturbances. The other thing that comes to mind is some of the work that ERCOT has already done, because of these large data center loads can be clustered together. And if you have a voltage event, like the one I just mentioned that just happened in Data Center Alley, they've already gone through the process to set a limitation on contingency criteria on the maximum amount of load that we can drop off for a single contingency event. And that number is about 3,200 megawatts right now. So that's going to drive some operational changes within ERCOT to limit that risk to below that value, because if you trip that load off that fast, you're going to risking over frequency and losing generation and other stability issues. So those are the couple of the primary things.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. I'll say again, appreciate all the work that you all do, and really appreciate the ongoing partnership between Texas RE, ERCOT, and the PUC in ensuring that we have a very reliable grid. So we'll look forward to seeing you all after your next report comes out.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thanks for being here this morning.
Thank you.
Next is item number 29. That's project number 58482, Large Load Demand Management Service. We have our proposal for publication. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. Lucy Considine for Commission staff, and with me is Jacob Bolzak. Before you is Commission staff's recommended proposal for publication to implement the large load demand management service specified in Senate Bill 6 from the last session. The proposed rule requires ERCOT to ensure that each electric cooperative transmission and distribution utility and municipally owned utility develop a protocol to allow transmission voltage customers to be curtailed during firm load shed events. The proposal also creates a new reliability service, the Large Load Demand Management Service, which allows ERCOT to curtail demand from qualifying large loads when there is a significant risk of an energy emergency alert resulting from extreme weather conditions. Staff proposes an annual budget of $54 million with offer prices capped at $5,000 per megawatt hour. The proposal includes questions for stakeholder feedback on scope, procurements, and budget and payments. We're happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you for that layout. Commissioners, questions for staff?
I do have one, and we kind of talked through this, and I think it might be something helpful to maybe get some comments on. So the proposal talks about if you participate in this, you won't participate in other ancillary services, which I understand. But is there a case or a scenario where a load is on a campus with many different loads, and or a load could split and be, it's 1 gigawatt, but 500 megawatts are this type of load and 500 or something else, and they could split up? Is that something we've thought about even being possible?
You're talking about a single load splitting?
Yes.
I think as long as the same megawatt isn't being sold twice, we're good to go. But the details of how that split works, I think we might need to.
Okay. So maybe it's
Talk a
something
little
we
bit
get
more
some
about.
comments on too,
Yeah.
or, okay. Because I'm
We
not
can
sure if
do
it's
that.
even possible, but I feel like at some point it's maybe been said to me, but the loads seem to be changing as we go along. Barksdale, do you have
Yeah,
thoughts?
Commissioner, I think it's a fantastic question, and I would also love to hear what the stakeholders have to say about it. I think we did propose a stricter reading of what the law says. We tried to mirror the language in the law. And so I think it would be easy to interpret the proposal to suggest that a single load, even if it can divide up different buildings and meter them separately, I think it would be easy to read the proposal to suggest that you can't sell half of your megawatts into one service and the other half into another.
Okay.
So I think asking that question, or at least out loud, folks will hear that you're interested in seeing if that might be possible, if it's worthwhile, if it's reasonable, if it's a good thing to do or not.
Thank you.
I too thought that was a fantastic question, Commissioner.
What do y'all want? Not in charge here.
Commissioners, any other questions for staff?
I guess I appreciate you pointed out that this service is really targeted towards those emergency conditions associated with weather events. And I would just be interested from stakeholders, the more data and information we have, the better communication we have between the loads and ERCOT, helps us to do, a better job in terms of utilizing these services and maybe doing what Commissioner Yachtman earlier kind of asked about in terms of how do we maybe potentially split them up or decipher them or use them at different times of the day. So I would just encourage folks, if they have thoughts and ideas regarding that type of communication and how important it is and how it can be facilitated, I think would be helpful as we move forward and actually implement this new process.
Appreciate all the work on this. You know, in the Senate B and C hearing yesterday, Senate Bill 6 was discussed a lot, and I'm glad to see we continue to diligently work to get all of those statutory provisions implemented in our rules. So appreciate it. Look forward to what the stakeholders have to say in getting this in place. Thanks to both of you.
Great, thank you.
Commissioners, that's the end.
Excuse me, Chairman.
Yes.
I think we need a motion
Oh,
to
sorry about that.
approve the
That's
proposal.
correct. Yep. I'll entertain a motion to approve the proposal for publication.
So moved.
Second?
A motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion prevails. I got distracted. So, Commissioners, that concludes the rules and projects portion. I was told that someone has come and would like to make a public comment, as we will always do. People are going to make the effort to come up here. I think it's incumbent on us to hear from them. So I would call back up item number 1, docket 56040. And Alex, I believe we have someone here for public comment.
Yes, that's right, Chairman. Would Savant Moore come up? And I'll get that spelling to the court reporter later. That's Savant and then Moore with 2 O's.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you. Coming to Austin, I can't get here in an electric car under one charge. I had to stop in Bastrop. So my name is Savant Moore. For the record, I'm here for the Texans who do not even know this room exists. The Texans who cannot leave their job or their shift or their farm to sit at this microphone this morning. They cannot be here, so I'm here. I have 3 minutes and 3 solutions, and you will not need new authority for a single one. You already have the power. The question is whether will you use it. I made this drive because a neighbor made a video that went viral because it told a story too many Texans recognize. On Saturday, July the 18th, 12 days ago, families in Cashmere Gardens in Houston, Texas went 8 hours without electricity. No hurricane, no storm, a normal Saturday that happened to carry a heat index over 100 degrees. 8 hours, no air conditioning, no refrigeration, insulin warming on the shelf. For 8 hours, a home in my community was not a shelter. It was an oven with a roof. And we know what heat does when the power fails. After Barrow, at least 10 of our neighbors in Harris County died of hypothermia. And our rates keep rising. Texans are paying more at a time when the average Texan will never see the salaries represented in this room. When people pay more, they deserve more. It still puzzles me that the size of town with lower incomes and marginalized communities seem to carry the outages, while the affluent sides keep their lights on. I'm not here to accuse. I'm here to ask the question out loud because your own data can answer it. So 3 solutions. 1, publish the neighborhood reliability data your rules already collect so every Texan can see which communities keep going dark and so the data can answer my question. 2, count the extreme heat days in your reliability metrics instead of measuring around the very days that kill. 3, open this room. I challenge you to offer virtual public comment. Zoom line so a nurse in Houston or a farmer in Lubbock can speak to you without burning a day's wages to do it. Neighbors video reach more Texans in one weekend than this meeting will reach in a year. Meet the people where they are. I'm asking for equity and a reliable grid for every Texan. So no neighbor of mine or yours suffers 8 hours in the heat again. You do not need new power to protect them. Use the power you have. Use it. God bless you and God bless the people of Texas.
Thank you for being here, Mr. Moore, and bringing this to our attention. Thank you.
Thank you for driving here.
All right, Commissioners, I think that then concludes our agenda. I know, we've, it's been about an hour. I think I'm going to call an audible just real quick. And I didn't tell him I was going to do this. Daryl, would you just mind coming up just real quick? Just have a couple questions.
You know, you have a, as I've told you many times, you have a way with
If
the
you could
words.
state your name for the record, sir.
Jimi Hendrix, future rock guitar icon, deceased rock guitar icon. I brought these sunglasses because, you know, I have you, didn't know what you were going to say, but I thought, well, I'm going to make sure that I'm going to bring these in case Thomas says something that makes it difficult to maintain my manly facade.
Just for those who may not know, how long have you worked at the Public Utility Commission?
At the end of next month, it will be 35.58333 years. I've been rounding up to 36 years just for easy math.
I appreciate you not rounding here. It makes me feel better about all of the advice you've given me on rate issues in the past, so I appreciate that. So over 35 years, which makes you the
Fifth longest.
fifth most tenured ever to work here. And that doesn't even count your all your leave that you'll be counting. I'm sure you'll be retiring at some point with even more than that.
Next month is that.
Oh, you are
date.
retiring next month.
I am at the end of next month, August 31st.
Okay, no, I knew that.
That corresponds to the 35.58333 years.
So when you came and told me this, I told you I was happy for you. I'm good at lying to you.
I've also told you many times, you do have a way with words.
I'm really happy for you. You, and I mean this in the best way, you are an institution around here. I asked your permission. I went and gave a talk at TIEC, and I asked your permission to let that group know. And I think the level of disappointment on people's faces and in what they said shows just how much you are valued, not just by the people on this side of the dais, not just by the people behind this wall, but by the entire industry. Your contribution to the work that this agency does and has done is really can't be calculated. And on a personal level, I'm going to miss you. In probably the first 2 years I came here, you and I, probably other than Tom Hunter, you and I probably had the deepest, best conversations, and I found we had a lot in common. And I've appreciated our relationship over the past, almost 20 years of me being here. And I hope you're not a stranger. I hope you enjoy your retirement. I do find it hard to think that someone who grew up on a dairy farm is going to actually retire in the sense of not have a purpose every day. I'm sure you will find a way to continue to have a huge impact in wherever you decide to put your talents and your time. And so I didn't know how many open meetings you might be at next month. So I definitely want to take this opportunity to tell you how much I personally appreciate you, everything you've done for this agency, for the state, and really for me personally. And I'm really going to miss seeing you around here. Commissioners?
Yeah, I've been avoiding my office for the past week because Daryl was trying to find me. And so I thought maybe if I wasn't there, he couldn't tell me and he couldn't make this announcement. So the chairman kind of screwed that up. I guess it's happening. But I echo everything he said. Even when I was at the OPUC office, you were always very helpful to us, worked with us, taught us so that we could work together, and it was very appreciated. I see Justin back there nodding his head. So we're very appreciative from the OPUC side, and as a commissioner now, you've been great to work with. So I hope you're passing that knowledge on. Thank you.
So appreciative of all that you've done for the agency, and also for me personally. I know when I first came on board, you spent a lot of time going through the details and explaining things in terms that I could understand. And I think, the contributions that you've made, through your work ethic, which I think have really kind of focused on not only your own personal contribution, but kind of sharing that with those around you. And I think if, anybody that maybe I've worked with over the many years that I've grown up and been in Texas, I've never seen anyone that has the passion that you've had to share your knowledge with others and to help, if you will, kind of our baby ratepayers to get the knowledge and understand the culture that you've brought to it. So You've been, tremendously instrumental in getting the work done, but also in kind of setting that standard to which I think all of us aspire. So we will tremendously miss you at the agency, but of course, wish you the very best, in your retirement.
Wow. 30, how many years? 30?
35.8333 years.
35.833. I think I'm at 3.87 months. So I'm trying to figure out how I divide that into your great experiences. But with due deference to many other fine people who have given me counsel since I've come on board, I think you were one of the first meetings that I had. And I still keep a piece of paper on average weighted cost of capital discussion that you and I had at one point. And I do appreciate that. And you are incredibly well thought of amongst the industry and certainly here in this building and far beyond. And so I would just echo what my fellow commissioners have had to say about you. And had I had any idea that you were also Jimi Hendrix, I've got about a half dozen albums you could have signed for me. So, but no, certainly wish you well in your retirement. And it's been an absolute pleasure. And unlike Commissioner Yaltman, I actually have you on the schedule to see here in my office and wish you well.
You missed out, Commissioner Yaltman. I'm still available for a bit. But,
I'll catch you. What's the last day that you're working?
August 31st, I'm going to take
September
off.
1. I'll see you.
Effectively, yes. I plan to be here at least for the next 2 weeks, and then I'm going to take at least some of the final 2 weeks of August off. I appreciate very much all your comments. Mr. Chairman.
Hey, Jimmy.
There you go. Now I really look like Jimi Hendrix. No, Mr. Chairman, as everybody knows, I did grow up on a dairy farm, and I never really, now I feel stupid with this. I never really, I'm not even sure I knew what the PUC was when I started working here in 1991. And, almost 36 years later, you blink your eyes a few times and you end up being a good fit. So appreciate very much your comments. And thank you.
Tom Hunter used to have a saying, the PUC, it's not for everyone.
Yeah.
It definitely was for you, and we're all thankful for that. The George H.W. Bush has a saying that's attached to the policy school I went to that says, public service is a noble calling and needs men and women of high character to want to invest in their communities, in their state, in their nation. You're a shining example of that and of what a public servant is. And you've shown that throughout your entire career and how you've invested in not just this agency, but the people in this agency. And we are forever indebted to that. And so I hope everyone listening take some time over the next 4 weeks to say something to Daryl. I know everyone here appreciates you, and I hope they all get a chance to tell you that in person.
And Mr. Chairman, one last thought. I know that I will very much miss our discussions about mixed martial arts and professional wrestling. That's the main thing I'm going to miss here. And I'm kidding, of course. But again, I appreciate all of your comments very much. And again, a lot of things you don't appreciate until you sort of experience them. That's true about most everything in life. And I don't know where the 36 years went, but you blink your eyes and then it's like, whoa, what happened? And I've already said this right just a few moments ago, but I never thought I'd be here that long, but it was a good fit, and hopefully it was good fit for the state, because it was a good fit for me. So I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Congratulations.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. And commissioners, with us having no further business before us, this meeting of the Public Utility Commission of Texas is hereby adjourned.